Happy Friday. I hope you guys are doing well today and that you're staying safe. I'm going to be starting our live session here for Cafecito time with official Latina. Our featured guest today is Martha Salmon, or Salmon. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but she is a registered nurse. She's a Latina registered nurse, and she started an Instagram handle called Latina RN Official. And she is going to be talking to us about the COVID-19 situation. So I invite you to ask questions during this time. I'm going to go ahead and read her bio. So we'll have this available on our Facebook channel if you can stay on, and we'll be getting started here. So Martha Salmon has been a nurse for over 10 years and is currently working as a pediatric transplant nurse in Los Angeles. She started as an LVN when she was 20 years old and realized that being the first college graduate was important to return to school to pursue her RN. Even though she was married and had two kids, by the time she was 22, she knew that continuing her education could not be something to put off. Martha has most of her nursing experience in pediatrics, but has worked with the adult population and in dialysis. She's currently enrolled in a Master's of Science in Nursing Public Health program to learn how to better serve the community around her. So I see that she is logged in right now, and I'm going to accept her call. And we are connecting.
Good
Hi, good
morning.
morning, Martha. How are
Hi,
you?
guys. I'm well. How are you guys?
I'm good. I'm staying home, so working from home.
Yeah, I'm off for like 8 days, so I'm enjoying being home right
Oh,
now.
that's good. Yeah, I was going to ask. Oh, so you're in LA,
Yeah.
correct? You're calling
Mhm.
from LA, and
Yeah.
I know you said that you were off work for this talk today. So I was really grateful for you joining us
Yeah, of
today.
course.
Yeah, and I guess can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Maybe just introduce yourself to our audience a little bit more.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Martha. I am a registered nurse in LA. My specialty is in pediatric transplant. So we take care of kids pre-transplant and post-transplant, liver and kidney mostly. Um, I have worked as an RN for it'll be 6 years, but I've been like in the nursing field for over 10 years because I started as an LVN. So that's like before you get to RN. I do have two kids there, so it's like homeschool teacher as well. So that's been really interesting. And I am in grad school as well. So that's been fun to kind of like me and the kids like doing our homework together and stuff like that.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you're even doing grad school during this time. Wow, and you're going, you went back already, what, this is your third time going back into a different degree, right?
Yeah, yeah, my
Wow,
third time.
that's
Yeah,
easy.
yeah,
Well, I do have some questions for you prepared.
yeah,
I will also like our audience to ask some questions,
yeah,
hopefully, throughout this time, and more people will be joining us. So, I guess talking about COVID-19 is something that you've probably been invited to do a couple of times. And
uh-huh.
um, how is the situation in LA right now? What does that look like for you and compared to some of your colleagues?
So, I mean, which is crazy, but luckily, I mean, I guess I say luckily kind of lightly, but luckily for the pediatric population, we haven't really seen like the influx of patients compared to like some of my friends that work in the adult community. So we do have a designated COVID floor, um, but and I'm on transplant. So those two like specialties, COVID and transplant, cannot be anywhere near each other because of how sick our transplant kiddos can get.
Yeah.
So that's I haven't really been in contact with any like COVID positive patients, but the downside to that is what we've seen is the kiddos that have come back positive for COVID, so many of them are not showing symptoms. So we only find out that they're positive because we test every kid before a procedure. So regardless if they're there for a tummy ache or whatever they're there for, if they're going to go for a procedure, we swab them for COVID just to make sure, and then we send them for their procedure. So that's when we're finding like, oh shoot, this kid was positive, but they were showing absolutely no signs. So it's I'm grateful that that it's not affecting kids as much, but at the same time it's scary because we're taking care of these kids and we're, in their area, and then to find out later like, hey, this that person was, or that kiddo was positive, is scary for the adults taking care of them, I guess.
Yeah, I bet. And especially being sensitive since they're on transplant.
Hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I guess um you're currently working in pediatrics. The children, the ones that did come out positive, are they is there, I know there's no treatment, so how are those type cases being handled for those families?
So for those families, it's really about like protection for everyone else, right? So luckily, since they aren't showing signs and symptoms, we treat what they're there for, and then we they're just sending them home, but with strict rules to like isolate. Anyone that's like the direct caregiver has to be isolated as well. And self isolation and social distancing are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, self isolation is literally you and that care, or if you're the caregiver for the child, it's you and that child separated from the rest of the family. You guys are not going out. There's the, it's literally self isolating. And then, of course, social distancing is like why we're not visiting our family and our friends, and when
Mm-hmm.
we go to the store we're wearing masks and washing our hands. So I feel like those two things need to be really
Differentiated.
right, exactly.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I think a lot of times we mix those around and
Yeah, and
uh,
it's hard. It is
mm-hmm.
hard to self isolate. I know for me personally, I was taking care of a kiddo all day, and at the end of the day the doctor came in and said, oh, this patient was exposed to someone who was positive for COVID-19. So let her and the mom know to watch for symptoms. And it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of like, excuse me? Like, and then what does this mean for all the nurses and, all the care partners and everyone taking care of this patient? And then 2 days later, I started feeling like a sore throat and coughing. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I was terrified. But during that time, I did self isolate just in case. So I was in my room. I didn't let my kids in. I didn't go out anywhere. And that even the day that I was self isolated, because I got COVID testing, um, it was I can't imagine going like 2, 3 weeks of self isolating. So it's hard. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I experienced some symptoms a while back, about a month ago, and I wasn't sure. I was scared, because a lot of
yeah.
people are scared, and I just went ahead and I self-isolated. I've never felt that sick before. I
Oh no.
couldn't get tested. Thank God I didn't have any respiratory issues, but my body hurt. I didn't really have a fever. I had like a mild, like 99%, fever, and a lot of, pain in my like neck and throat, and lots of dryness.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I had it. Some people may not be really experiencing those really severe symptoms.
Right.
I was grateful that if I had it, I was one of those people. But in my state, where I'm in Washington, we're not allowed to get tested here because of the lack of testing,
Yeah.
unless you're having respiratory problems.
Wow.
So because I had to call the health department, and they said that it needed to be approved by the health department. I talked to one of their nurses, and she said, unfortunately, I just couldn't get tested unless I was having problems breathing. So that's the decision
Interesting.
here. Yeah.
Wow.
I think I wonder if in bigger cities they do have more testing kits because Vancouver's pretty small compared to other cities, and Portland is right next door to us, so it's that's definitely a bigger population for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well,
Yeah,
I'm glad everything's better now.
yeah,
So scary, kind of just
it
like
is.
waiting to see if you have respiratory issues.
Yeah, and yeah. I think what for me, a lot of concerns were just being around like my elderly in-laws, or we just had a newborn in our family for one of my sisters-in-laws. So I'm just afraid for the most vulnerable in my family. So I just even now, like I'd be just staying away, just not trying to risk anything.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that in a lot of in our community, there's like a lot of anxiety about COVID-19, especially seeing the news every day. For
Hmm.
me, sometimes it was just heartbreaking. And it made me aware, but it's just made me also very, very afraid and just worry for my elderly parents. So in that same way, what are some ways that as a as anybody could they kind of try to relax about the situation, like to kind of deal with those anxieties? What are some tips that you might have for a community to try to also take care of themselves?
Yeah, social media and the news, I feel like they're trying their best to just, disseminate the information that they have, but it does come off it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to see and hear about everything that, is happening with COVID. My biggest thing is just if you are taking care of yourself and, really respecting the social distancing rules, there you don't, not that you don't have to worry, but it's just you should relax a little more. You go to the grocery store and you come home and you wipe everything down, you wash your hands, you're just being more thoughtful in, your actions. I think you should be okay. And I live with my grandma, so coming home from work is super scary for me, but like I said, I'm doing my best and my part to, do what I need to do, where if that means like getting undressed in the garage and making sure my clothes are in the washer, not wearing my shoes inside the house, and just being more diligent in like, what I'm doing. Um I think you guys, like, everyone should be okay as long as rules are being followed, like I said, and you're just really following these social distancing rules. So,
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And I know that we kind of talked a bit about just our undocumented
mhm,
group, and I
yeah.
think those that do have illegal status, but they're not legal permanent residents or citizens, and they may be afraid of seeking medical help for various reasons. If someone's experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, can they still get help? Can they be seen? I know that we won't be answering any legal type of, because we're both not attorneys, so we'll hopefully touch base with one of our immigration attorneys later. But can they still be seen, and can they be refused care? I think that might be the better question.
So, when I read the questions and I saw this question on there, it broke my heart because I can't even imagine someone being sick or feeling ill and then but also feeling that they can't get help. That it I guess I never thought of that. But I did speak to one of the social workers at my work just so I know also. And there's no way that anyone will get turned away, whether you have insurance or not, whether you're documented or not. They don't even ask that.
Yeah,
And then, but of course, if you do go to the hospital and they do help you apply for like emergency medical or emergency insurance. If you don't qualify, then yes, you will they will send you the bill, but your immigration status has nothing to do with like the care you receive, if you get care. If you are sick or if your family member is sick and they need medical attention, please take them, because there's no reason why they shouldn't be getting that care.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Yeah. And is there, I know with it being scared, just being scared, there's a lot of statistics going on out there right now, which is that's my next point. I've seen that a lot of news that minorities have a higher rate of having the COVID-19 symptoms or just complications, and not getting that medical care on time. I know that community many may have not have like health insurance or medical, they can't afford a medical visit, or may have faced discrimination in the hospital setting. And we hear a lot of different, information right now. But I still feel it was something that we need to talk about. What are some ways we can better serve our communities off and online to get the medical care they need or encourage it?
Well, I think just like the way we were talking earlier, I think a lot of it is education. A lot of people don't know that they can receive care, they can receive help. Um, so I think just constantly like reminding, I know like, and I bring up my grandma a lot just because
Yeah,
she's she's an older Hispanic lady,
yeah,
so stubborn but so sweet. so so with her it's a lot of like, mom, you can't, like the other day she was like, I um I'm gonna go out, and I'm like, for what? And she's like, I just need to get out. I'm like, we all need to get out, but we can't, like there's there's rules right now. So I think it's a lot of just reminding and a lot of educating and a lot of just really letting everyone know how important this is. I don't think anyone saw this coming. And even for me as a nurse, when this first started, like back in like February, people
hmm
would come to me and they're like, is it that serious? And I said, it's not that serious. It's a virus. It's going to go away. So to see that it's from that to this, it's scary. And it's but what helped me is education. I just hearing it and just knowing how important it is to like keep each other safe is really the only way. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I feel like.
Just being informed and doing your part to stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and then I guess kind of talking about, I know that you mentioned your grandma, and I know some individuals in our community only speak Spanish. And they may be afraid to get the care they need because they can't have a family member go in with them as an interpreter if they're experiencing symptoms. Do you know what they can do in a situation like this? If there's an interpreter in the hospital, or do you know how your cases are being handled in your hospital?
Yeah, this topic is huge to me. So at work, I'm like one of the advocates for, and I'm not fluent in Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
but my family is. So when I see families that like, and I feel like it's a lot in the Hispanic community where the doctor will come in, they're talking English or speaking English, I'm sorry, and the family's just like nodding, and I know they don't understand, and I
Yeah.
later on, because I can get by with my Spanish, but for anything else I get an interpreter like immediately. So I will ask the family, like, did you understand what the doctor was saying? And they're like, not really. And I'm like, oh no, I get the doctor back. I get the interpreter, because at the hospitals we have phone interpreters, like video interpreters, and in-person interpreters. So
Oh,
there's no reason why there shouldn't be, you know, interpretation in the hospital. And I know it seems scary, and a lot of families are kind of like timid, but in the beginning of the conversation, if you tell the doctor, like, I need an interpreter, it's it's their legal right. Like they can sue for not using an interpreter.
okay.
It's so serious. It's so serious. And I know when I'm doing my admission, like when I'm admitting to the hospital, I write it on the board. I tell them, at any point. And it could be maybe you understand English perfectly, and then the doctor said one thing you don't understand. I need an interpreter for what you just said. And
Yeah.
you're not going to get in trouble. No one's going to get mad at you. Like, this is your legal right. And everyone needs to know that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's been on my mind, and I'm glad that they do have those options to do virtual interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm from Southern Indiana, and our diversity, it's not really there. We don't have a lot of Latinos, but the Latino population is there, compared to other cities like LA or Washington D.C.
Right.
or New York. But those are some of my concerns, because especially when you're so sick and vulnerable, even though if you can understand some things in English, it's so important for a person to have their own
Absolutely.
language spoken. It scares me even in a legal situation, like I do, because Spanish is my first language and I'm from El Salvador. But it's so important, even just having to explain any legal or medical care type of language to someone who speaks, that speaks their own language, that they understand what's going on. And it breaks my heart to see that some individuals who are really sick have gone in and they're without families. They
Yeah.
can't be without their family. It's been overwhelming on my mind. So thank you for answering that question.
Yeah. And even if, I mean, and I've honestly been thinking of like so many different ways that, you know, we can make people feel comfortable. And even like, let's say you have to send like anyone, this is for anyone, your mom or your grandma or anyone who doesn't speak the language, even sending them like with and you can't go with them, unfortunately, but like a card that I need an interpreter, just so everyone that is taking care of them is aware. And it's just, it's anything helps, but just so we're for sure knowing that they're using an interpreter.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of switching gears a little bit here. Um, let's talk about careers. When I was in high school and undergrad, I felt that everyone around me knew what they wanted to do. And I know that we're talking mainly to our audience who are in law school or who are in pre-law. And are those that are in pre-law or those that may not have a declared major, they may not know what they want to do. Since I was in the pre-med program and ended up in law school, some
Wow.
in that same boat of, okay, I want to take care of people. I want to help others because it feels like there's that calling of helping others in some way. What are some tips? How did you know you wanted to become a nurse? How did that decision come about? Because for me, it took a lot of exploring
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Well, I feel like my journey was a little different only because when I was 12 years old, my brother was in the hospital. He had a tumor on his kidney. And so we were at Children's Hospital LA, where I work. We were there for months when he was, you know, admitted for chemo and radiation. And I just felt like the nurses that were taking care of him were like angels on this earth. And
Yeah.
so growing up, I knew that I wanted to do something like that. I had zero idea how much like schooling and everything that becoming a nurse actually took, but I knew I want to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I graduated high school, I started just like looking up how to become a nurse, and then that's how I ended up like getting my LVN and then my RN. So my route was a little longer than others, but I felt I knew back then when I was 12 that becoming a nurse was something that I should do. So
Yeah. Yeah, for me it took a long time. I come from uh two very thinker like parents.
yeah,
They both like science and or engineering. In their countries, my mom was a nurse and my dad, he was an engineer. Coming to the US, they didn't have that same their degrees didn't matter coming to the US,
right.
unfortunately. So they had different pathway, but they very adamantly insisted that um, I pick what I wanted. Hint, hint, but you should also be a doctor.
Do what
So,
makes you happy, but
do what you love, but medicine, you know, they're so, especially my mom, she always wanted to go to medical school and she never had the opportunity. So there was like this pressure of, I would love for you to be a doctor, dear daughter.
yeah.
So I guess choosing a career took a little while, and going to law school was a decision that I had to not take lightly and just really take into serious consideration. And I'm glad I did make the decision.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess for those that may be scared, I guess, to be going into nursing, what are some things that you have enjoyed? And even though this pandemic is going on, um, what words of encouragement would you give to someone if they're in that same boat of deciding if they want to go into a nursing career or a medical field career instead of going to a different field?
I feel like when you are even thinking about becoming a nurse, it's like you feel it. You
Mhm.
know that this is for you. So even like when you're going through your classes, there's going to be so many times where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this. I It's too much work." But there's just that light inside of everybody. Everyone has it. Some people find it later, but there's this fire and this light inside of everyone. And it's really important that you stick to that and you're like, "No, I can do this." And I think that's why like Latina RN is so important to me, because I was like, for me, I was 19. I had my kids, I was married, and going to school was so hard for me because it's like I was working full time and you know taking care of all these people like in my home, but I knew that it was going to be worth it. So for me, it's very like, if I could do it, anyone could do it. And I promise you. And the journey is it's crazy, but the end is so worth it. So like my favorite quote of all time is, the best view comes after the hardest climb. And that's with anything, even literally, if you hike this crazy trail but you get to the top, you're like, I'm so glad I did that, because this is breathtaking, which is how I feel about life as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
yeah, thank you for
I'll
having
kind of leave a couple of minutes within this time frame, so I'll make some comments if anyone wants to ask some questions
yeah.
for our Latina registered nurse. I love what you're doing with Latina Art, and I know that we're both doing some similar things within our own careers and our own calling. So it's something that I can relate to, our passion for our community and wanting to make others be seen, but also for our community to see some role models that they look like us, they, have had
Yeah,
struggles and that they're thriving. So it really makes me happy to see that your page
thank
and
you
and
so much.
seeing what you're advocating for,
Yeah,
and the same way
no,
a different career is awesome.
absolutely. I know when I saw your page, I was so excited that there's so many different like ways to just connect with your community. So it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, and I appreciate all your support. You have been so supportive of Latina RN, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful to see the connections that this has brought. So it's great.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we find an intersection where we collaborate.
I know we've been like talking for a while back and forth, so this is cool. This is really
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. I'm going to kind of remind our guests now, or sorry, our audience now of our next week's Cafecito time participants. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a great day.
You too. Thank you
Stay
guys.
safe. Thank you. Bye. And for our audience, thank you so much for being with us today. Our Cafecito time will continue to be going on for the next 2 weeks. We have some amazing guests for you. I'm going to be announcing our guest for next week and today on our posts. It's already up on our Latina website if you want to go and check it out. I also want to remind everyone that if you are graduating or you know someone who's graduating, please submit your information so we can celebrate you, so we can celebrate with your family and talk about you on our video celebration dedication for the graduating class of the spring of 2020. And for those who already took the bar exam, and you passed it in the spring, we want to celebrate you too with our Esquire celebration. For the graduating class dedication video, your applications are due on April 30th, 2020 this year. And for those who are going to be celebrating their bar passage, you will be celebrated in we ask that you please submit your information before May 1st, 2020. So please make sure you get those in. Email us at official Latina or latinastories@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being online with us, and check out our store and all the amazing, awesome merchandise that can make you so proud and visible and wear that with pride. And if you have any questions, make sure you DM me or you email me. Thank you again for being with us on our Cafecito time this week. It's been so great with you guys, and I will see you on Monday. Have an awesome weekend. Bye.